Hey, what's up, my friend? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are taking a look at a report that was just released documenting the explosion in AI chatbot usage. You know, sites like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Microsoft Copilot. But buried in the data is a much more interesting, dare I say, sinister story that is silently yet systematically destroying the ability of small businesses to market their services online. And today, I'm going to show you all of the data and tell you what you need to be doing right now to make sure that your business thrives as artificial intelligence becomes a bigger part of our daily lives. So let's get into it. All right, so this is the actual report. It's put out by a website called One Little Web, which from what I can tell builds SaaS building, B2B web design, link building, SEO services. But they put together a pretty nice little comprehensive report of all of the different chatbots and how they're faring against each other and what the growth rates have been of all of those. Now, and I'm not going to go through this whole document basically because unless you look at this like it's a sport, then it's not all that interesting. But I want to show you some of the data, some of the stuff I do think is interesting, and then draw some conclusions based on a couple of other studies that were recently released that I think are going to be a lot more pertinent to you as a business owner. So the first one is just looking at ChatGPT. They control about 50% of all of the chatbot traffic, which I found crazy. I didn't think that was the case because I build so much inside of programs like N8N, and I use all of the different services. I just assumed that, you know, Gemini and Claude and ChatGPT were all in pretty close competition as to who was number one. But from a consumer standpoint, it's clear half the world's using ChatGPT and everybody else is kind of fighting for the scraps of that. And if we take a look at another one of these, this is just the overall growth rate of chatbot web traffic. Now, again, when I say chatbot, I mean like ChatGPT, Gemini, the bots, the websites you go to, or the apps that you download that you can communicate with. Last year, August to July of 2024, you know, pretty consistent growth. And then around February of this year, we started to see some pretty significant growth out of the chatbots and all of the overall growth, right? So this begs the question, are we seeing a shift in the way people are communicating and conducting things like search? Because that does matter to us as business owners, right? If people aren't going to Google and they're not going to one of the other major platforms, then there's a chance that all of the SEO, all of the work that we're doing on content building is just getting blown away. And this has been something that people have talked about for a long time, that, oh, AI is killing search and AI is destroying your ability to reach your ideal prospect. And so I decided I wanted to dig into that a little bit. And there's actually another study put out by One Little Web as well that analyzed that. And it's a little bit older. It's from about March of this year. But taking a look at that, you can see here, this is search engine traffic month over month versus chatbots. And it's ridiculous. There's not even a competition right now between AI chatbots and traditional search. And so you might be led to believe, or, you know, this might lead you to the conclusion that, oh, okay, so I don't need to worry about AI as it relates to search. All of this talk about SEO and losing traffic to AI, that's really a bunch of garbage, because even though we're seeing, you know, doubling of growth year over year for chatbots, it's not even coming close to search traffic. But there is one problem in here, and this is where I think is the kind of the hidden data behind the data. And it has to do with Google itself and how much of the market it controls. Google controls roughly 93%, what is that, 93 or 95? 93% of all search traffic. 9 out of every 10 searches are going to Google to find out information. And I don't know if you've been on Google lately, but they have changed their platform. And they have decided that instead of feeding you a list of potential links that will answer the question, that if they can scrape a site and they can find the information for you, they'll just show it to you. And so we can kind of come in here and take a look at this, and I can just give you an example of how this works. If you haven't seen it, hopefully you have. If I live in Scottsdale, so I say, what is the best lawn care service in Scottsdale, Arizona, right there. It's going to go and search, and it says there's no single best for Scottsdale, Arizona, but there's the Valley Verde Lawn Care for general services, and it gives me some clicks. So it basically went to Yelp, it went to Home Advisor, it got the data for me, and it just passed it back to me. Now, this is a problem if you're Yelp, if you're Home Advisor, if you're Lawn Starter, because the work that you're doing to drive traffic to your site is getting killed. And what we find when we dig into this data is that if you happen to be a service provider, if you happen to be someone who relies heavily on helping people find answers to problems. So let's say, for example, you're a nutritionist who works with women who are going through IVF, in vitro fertilization, to try and get pregnant. And you have a ton of nutritional information on your site. So women who are getting ready to spend $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to go through in vitro, they have the best shot of getting pregnant. What we're seeing, and I know this because I have a client in that exact situation right now, she is seeing declines of 30 to 60% of her organic SEO traffic. Because when people go to Google asking for nutritional advice, asking for recipes, anything like that, what they're getting is Google is going out and scraping that information and then bringing it directly to the individual. And because Google controls 93% of the search, this is having a dramatic effect on web traffic, traditional organic sort of SEO traffic. And we can see that in a Pew study that was recently done here. So this is questions that for longer search queries are more likely to produce AI summaries. So they did a survey and they did a report. They followed something like, I want to say 900 people and monitored all of their web search traffic, which I'm surprised they could get 900 people to do that. This is pretty interesting. The percentage of Google searches in March 2025 that produced an AI overview. So of all searches, about 20%, let's call it 20% of searches produce some sort of AI response. Now, if it starts with a question, that jumps to 60%. So if I say, how do I do X, Y, and Z, or where do I find the X, Y, Z, right? That now jumps to 60%. If it contains a noun or a verb, it's at 36%. And then, of course, if you have longer words, so the longer your question or your query is to Google, the more likely it is that it's going to try and return you an AI response. And this is why we're starting to see traffic decline. And if you haven't seen this already, count your blessings. It's probably coming for you. Right now, it's mainly kind of tied to the sort of like services-based industries, consulting industries, like law firms, like agencies type stuff for marketing advice. It's kind of restricted to that. But I have a feeling as the models improve, what we're going to see is that's going to expand. And then another really interesting report from that Pew study here. Google users are less likely to click on a link when they encounter search pages with AI summaries. So they have here on the left pages with AI summaries versus those without. If an AI summary comes up, clicking on a link from the search result, only 8% versus 15%. That's a 50% reduction. Ending their browsing session, 26% versus 16%. So we see a massive jump in the number of people who, on the initial response from AI, get the information they're looking for and they're gone. When we come to continuing the Google search, that doesn't change that much. So we still got about 35%, 33% on average that are doing that. And then leaving Google to browse a different site, that's about the same because frankly, 93% of the search is all coming from Google. So you would expect that they would be getting the bulk of the traffic. Now, what do you do about this? Well, there's been a lot of discussion online about starting to make your site more AI friendly. And you can do that using a variety of methods. One of them being put a lot of really helpful content on the site that will trigger back to get the AI to answer you. Right now, we don't need to worry about ChatGPT and what advice it gives, or Perplexity, or any of these other like AI bot sites. What we do have to be concerned about is what Google is presenting when they go out to retain information. So again, if I come back here and we take a look at this, inside of the AI overview, I got Scottsdale, Arizona Lawn Service, and these are the links back to where we should go, but sometimes you can click in here. I don't know why it won't let me click in here. And you can actually go to the Valley Verde Lawn Care driveway design landscaping company, and they'll just link directly to it. And so one of the ways for you to do that is to have content on your site that directly that's searchable by Google and that will return you as potentially the best provider. Another way is obviously to have your Yelp reviews and all of that stuff as high as it can go. And then there are some other things that we can do to make the page more AI searchable. And we do that in the header tags. And what I want to do is, instead of getting into it, because this video is already getting a little long in the tooth, what I want to do is later on this month, I am going to put together a video on the best practices for small businesses who want to give their sites the best chance of popping up when AI takes over. Because we're at like 60% now of if you're using a question, that might jump to 80% in the next year. We have no idea, but we got to start getting prepared for that. And so if you want to watch that video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, hit that bell icon, make sure you leave me a comment and let me know what you think. And then I'll leave the links to all of these reports down and the research down in the description as well, so you can go read it for yourself if you're interested. But my goal with this video was to do two things. Number one, make you aware that a lot of the information that you're getting really isn't that accurate, that a lot of it is a lot of noise and not much signal. And also to point out that, hey, we're in a transitionary period where for the last 20 years, Google search has been a really viable, and SEO has been a really viable strategy for businesses. And that is starting to change. I don't think SEO is going to change. There will still be a place for SEO. But we're going to have to do a better job as business owners of making sure that our sites are the ones that are getting pulled and getting presented when someone comes to ask us about a specific service that we offer. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.